And
I'm Mr. Patrick, and we're here to talk about some books from recent history that we really enjoyed that we'd like to recommend for you. So let's start with Mrs. Chrenka.
absolutely, I would like to recommend an Anne Martin book. I'm a big fan of Anne Martin. And this book that she wrote recently is called Rain, Rain. Rain as in falling from the sky, and reign as in a king reigns, or maybe even a queen. And that's one thing that you need to know about as you start to read this book is the word homonym. A homonym is two words that sound the same but have different meanings. And sometimes bear, or rain, rain. And sometimes there are even three, or if very rare, quadronyms. I just made that up. It's not really a term. But anyway, the main character in this book, Rose, has a dog named Rain because rain came to them during a storm. And unfortunately, Rain also disappears during a megastorm, a hurricane. And as Rose searches for her dog, she learns things about her father who brought the dog home, about herself, about her uncle, and even about Rain himself. And I want to read a little bit here. This is about Rose's life with Rain before Rain disappears. When Rain and I are at home together alone, we sit inside or on the front porch, and Rain puts one of her front feet in my lap. I rub her toes, and she gazes into my blue eyes with her eyes, which are the color of a chocolate bar. After a while, she starts to fall asleep. Her brown eyes squint shut until they're completely closed. At bedtime, she crawls under the covers with me. If I wake up during the night, I find that Rain has smashed her body against mine and rested her head across my neck. Rain's breath smells like dog food. So not only for dog lovers, for readers far and wide, this is a great, great book, Rain, Rain by Anne Martin.
I would like to recommend Pax by Sarah Pennypacker. Yep, Sarah Pennypacker wrote Pax. I recently read it and I loved it. It's one of my favorite books of the year. It's about a fox named Pax and a young boy named Peter. When Peter was a young boy, he found Pax, the only surviving member of a family of foxes, the only surviving member of a litter, and he adopted Pax and raised him from a kit. Gets to the point where they live in an area where war is encroaching on their lives, Peter and his family, and the dad decides it's time to set Pax free and send him out into the wild. So they do. They drive him to the countryside and they leave him there. Peter, this upsets greatly, and a day later he decides he's going to go search for Pax and bring him home. He doesn't think Pax has the capability of surviving since he was raised by humans. So the story is really an adventure of Peter going out and searching for Pax, and believe it or not, Pax decides he doesn't want to be apart from Peter, so his goal is to come back and find Peter. So if it's not in your library, make sure you request that it's on your shelves soon. Pax by Sarah Pennypacker.
3 Times Lucky by Sheila Turnage. And this is not a brand new book. There's actually a sequel, and there may be a second sequel. What's the second sequel called?
Trequel.
Yeah, we made that word up too. But I did enjoy this book, and I wanted to talk about it. It's a great story for people who like a little bit of adventure and definitely a mystery. I have a lot of people asking for mystery suggestions. So the main character in this book, her name is Mo, which is short for Moses, and she washed up into a town during a hurricane and was found by a man named the Colonel, who takes her in, and Colonel runs the cafe in town, and which is a central part of this small town. They know everyone, Mo and the Colonel. And when the cafe's crankiest customer turns up dead, and an out-of-towner lawman is nosing around, things start to look a little strange in town, and Mo and her best friend Dale decide they're going to solve the mystery before the lawman does. This book has a lot of layers, a lot of intrigue and interest, some adventure. It's a good friendship story too, and I wanted to recommend it. I enjoy the author, Sheila Turnage's craft of writing. I find her stuff interesting to read. She keeps the story flowing really well. So, 3 Times Lucky by Sheila Turnage.
Sounds good. The next book I would like to recommend is a book that some of you are probably already familiar with, and maybe even you've read it. It's called Crossover by Kwame Alexander. A couple years ago it won the Newbery Award. It's a great book. It's written in verse, which means it's kind of like one big long poem, but don't let that scare you. It's a great story. It's easy to follow. It's about 2 kids in middle school who play basketball who are pretty darn good. They're twins, and they are very close until some things start to happen that their interests kind of differ, and a wedge is put between the 2 of them, so they need to figure that out. Their father is a former NBA basketball star, but his health isn't the greatest, and that's a concern throughout the book. One of the things I really loved about the book is how it is written in verse, and how it kind of evokes the feeling, especially the basketball scenes, of actually being on a basketball court. So the first chapter is called Dribbling, and I'm going to read a little bit of that to you, and you tell me what you think. At the top of the key, I'm moving and grooving, popping and rocking. Why you bumping? Why you locking? Man, take this thumping. Be careful though, 'cause now I'm crunking. Crisscrossing, flossing, flipping, and my dipping will leave you slipping on the floor while I swoop in to finish with a fierce finger roll. Straight in the hole. Swoosh. That's the first chapter. So kind of fun to read.
Definitely.
Also really, like I said, kind of conjures up an image of being on the basketball court, which I really liked. So it's called Crossover by Kwame Alexander. Why am I bringing that up now? Because he has another book coming out. It's either out or it is...
I think it was just released, like last week.
Okay, so he has another book that has been just released called Booked, and it is a soccer book. I'm looking forward to, written also in verse, looking forward to checking that one out as well. But if you haven't read Crossover and you like poetry or you like a good story about basketball, this might be the book for you.
I would like to recommend the book One Crazy Summer by Rita Williams-Garcia, not just because I'm looking forward to summer actually coming to Michigan, although that is true, but because this is a different kind of story. It's historical fiction. It feels like realistic and contemporary fiction, though. They're talking, the main character, Delphine, and her 2 sisters, in the beginning of this book, are put on an airplane by their father and their grandmother. They're in New York, and they're flying all the way to California to spend the summer, one crazy summer, with their mother. They haven't seen their mother or heard from their mother in a long time. And when they get there, they're not quite sure what to expect. They don't get hugs. They don't get kind of mothering. But what they do get is an introduction to kind of the very beginning of parts of the civil rights movement. Really well written. I enjoy anything by Rita Williams-Garcia. So One Crazy Summer.
That sounds good and interesting. I'm a fan of historical fiction. So the last one that I would like to recommend is called Circus Mirandus by Cassie Beasley.
I like the cover.
Yeah. If you like Roald Dahl, you might enjoy this book. There's an element of magic to it, and it's about a young boy named Micah Tuttle. He lives with his grandfather, Ephraim, who has told him about this magical circus that he visited when he was a younger boy. Now Ephraim, the grandfather, is very ill, and it looks as though he's going to die fairly soon. And Micah lives with him and an old great aunt of his that's very grumpy and unpleasant. That's maybe a Roald Dahl connection.
Yeah.
And he learns more about this magic circus and learns that actually when Ephraim was a young boy and visited the circus, he was promised a miracle by someone from the circus called the Light Bender. And now Micah has made the decision that he's going to seek out this light bender and see if the miracle can be to save his grandfather's life. I'm going to read you a quote that kind of gives you the feel of the book a little bit. This is from when Ephraim, the grandfather, was a young boy and visited the circus for the first time. It reads, Children Ephraim didn't recognize were everywhere he looked, but there were no adults except for the performers. On the third day, Ephraim asked the ticket taker, whose name he learned was Jeffrey, if grown-ups weren't allowed inside. The man scratched his chin. "I'm a grown-up, aren't I?" he said. "Silly question. I mean regular adults, people who aren't working here." "Oh, those," Jeffrey said, as though adults were a kind of nasty vegetable. "It's not that they're not allowed so much as they're not invited. They spoil the mood, you see." So that gives you the idea of the kind of circus that Ephraim visited when he was a kid and that Micah is seeking out and trying to find as a child as well. So if you like fantasy, if you like magic, Circus Mirandus by Cassie Beasley just might be a good pick for you. And that's it, right? Am I right?
Yep. Happy reading, everyone.